Okay, so this tutorial is going to follow along the presentation I presented in my Art 102 class, but a little bit more condensed. If you're new to this video, don't worry, I'm going to assume no prior knowledge. Let me share my screen here. So I'm going to show you how to use a couple different tools related to normals and using curves to draw profiles and then rotating those profiles to create objects, polygonal objects. So that's the rotate tool. I'm going to use Maya 2019, slight update since the slide tutorial. First thing I want to do is go into kind of an orthographic view. So I'm going to go into my orthographic and then front, and then I can see these are my kind of main axes here. And I'm going to draw a profile of like a vase or something that is kind of round and has a consistent profile all the way around. I can do that with my pencil tool. So I might do something like start here, draw a curve. It's going to be a very fun vase. And then I want to give it like a foot. This will be really exciting. So what's going to happen is this profile will get rotated around the y-axis to create my object. But first I want to go in and do some editing of my control vertices. So I can go in, or my control points, no, control vertices. So these are all the control vertices that are like driving the shape of this curve. So for instance, if I didn't like this control vertex here, I didn't like that kind of like awkward curve, I could press W, grip my handle, and kind of go in and soften that out. So I can kind of really get dialed into the shape that I want to create. If I wanted a pretty flat bottom, what I could do is go in and turn on my snap to grid here function, and then move all my control vertices there on the grid, and then it's going to flatten out that bottom for me. Bring it up there. And the other thing that I'd probably want to do is extend this to the origin point here. All right, looks great. I mean, you know, it looks fine for my purposes today. Is it? No, leave it. Just leave it. Sorry, I have my snap to vertices turned on, so I'm going to turn that off again, and then I can play around. Okay, I'm going to leave it. It's fine for the demo. I'm going to right-click and then go back into object mode, and then from this, select my curve, and then from this menu, this little rotate tool, click rotate. And I can tell that it rotated around like backwards, right? So I've got like my dark vertices on the outside and my light vertices on the inside. So I can do a couple things to change that. I can go in and say, double click my revolve options and here. Undo, double click my revolve options, make sure that I'm rotating around my Y, start of the sweep angle. I can actually maybe start at 360 and then go to 0. I think that might reverse it for me. Number of segments, so that's kind of like the vertical breaks. If you want more detail, if you're going to go in and do some more work later, you might want to increase that. And then I can select output geometry as my polygon. Let me show you a couple different ways. I'm going to start with polygon, and then I'm going to do a NURBS. And then I'm going to hit apply. That doesn't seem like that took, so. And I don't have axis control, so I will go in and show you how to reverse the normals. So in 3D modeling programs, you want to make sure that your faces have a kind of normally facing direction. And in this case, I was making a vase, I would probably want this outside to be the thing that like receives the image textures, or, you know, that light bounces off of, rather than the inside. So with my object selected, I can go into mesh tools, edit mesh display, normals, and say reverse. And now it's reversed so that the kind of dark side of the face is on the inside, and the lighter gray side of the mesh is on the outside. So that's the normals. And then, as you can see, I have the shape here. It has the little mesh icon. I don't think once I hit apply that it's still connected to the curve, but let's just play and see if it is. I'm gonna right click and say control vertex. If I grab that, it still is. So you can go back in and you can still edit. That's kind of really nice. You can still edit the curve, and the polygonal mesh will update. That's kind of exciting. All right, so I'm gonna undo, close, undo. And then I'm gonna say, do the same thing, except I'm gonna use the NURBS output. It kind of depends on how you want to be modeling this thing afterwards. For the purposes of the class that I'm teaching, Art 102, we're using polygonal modeling, so that makes no sense. But you can also output to NURBS geometry, and then do the same thing under mesh display, reverse your normals. Oops. But it's not a polygonal mesh yet, so I need to convert it to a polygonal mesh. So I'd go under modify, convert NURBS polygons. Then I can go back in under mesh display and then reverse. It will, you have both these objects now when you do the conversion. And now when I edit the curve, the control vertices, it doesn't edit it will edit only the kind of the NURBS surface, not the polygonal mesh. So what I generally tend to do once I've done that, like you created a NURBS curve and created a curve and created a NURBS surface, I usually put those on a new layer. So under my channel box layer editor, new layer, and then I turn them off so I can see what I'm doing. So this is my beautifully reversed, normally reversed polygonal conversion from the NURBS. And then in the tutorial that I provide my students, I have a couple more features. And this is to kind of create like a walled object so that you end up with something that might be like 3D printable, for instance. So this is the kind of snapping the grid, the rotate, the selection of the axis. There's a polygon conversion, kind of normalizing the curves. And here's where like some of the extruding, and this is where you actually like create a thickness. And that extrusion kind of matters depending on which way your faces are normally facing, right? So if the thickness is set to negative, you're going to need to select the mesh and reverse all the negatives. So let's do that. So I'm going to select my object, and then going to be hit control or edit mesh and then extrude. And then here you can kind of select the number of divisions. I have that set to 42 from another object. So I think in this case, let's just see what happens when I say offset. Suppose I need to go into face mode. Select all. Mesh. Extrude. And then I can create a thickness. And then if I go into my side view here and look at my wireframe, I can see that I have these kind of like slightly offset these faces are slightly offset from one another. So that's going to create like a 3D printable object, but if you're also like, if you're rendering this object with like glass, you'll have a super realistic reflection because you'll have 4 walls that the light is passing through from outside of the like glass through that first wall, then the interior wall of that first wall, then the interior of the second wall, then the exterior of the second wall. So it creates really realistic light bounces. All right, I think that's all that I wanted to show from that. The rest gets kind of into. Yeah, you can add polygons to smooth the object. You can reduce the polygons for computational efficiency, and then render stuff, which we'll get into at another point. The other thing that I wanted to show was the like kind of duplicate special, and that is I create an umbrella to help us learn about duplicate special. So I'm going to go back into object mode. We can move our beautiful strange vase shape. And I'm going to start with, in my poly modeling tab, a cylinder. That's what that thing's called. And then I'm going to go into my attribute editor, into my poly cylinder tab, and I'm going to change my subdivision down into 8. So I have 8 equal sections, kind of split down the middle, 4 on each side. I'm going to round the cap, and then I'm going to increase the subdivisions of the cap. So that's the kind of beginning of my umbrella. I'll go into my face selection mode, box select the kind of bottom portion of this umbrella, and then hit delete. And then I can do something kind of similar for each of these sections. So ultimately what I'm going to do is edit just one of these umbrella panel selections, and then I'm going to duplicate that around, back around the 360 degrees center pivot. Oops, I deleted too much. I don't want that top selected. So maybe I'll do this for my top view. And I should actually be cognizant, when I was recording earlier, somebody didn't like something. I don't know if it was Zoom or Maya, but when I was in a multi-view, it got kind of glitchy. So I'm gonna try to be cognizant of that and stay as much as I can in the single view. All right, so now I have just one of my umbrella panels, but one of the things that I want to do is create, like subdivide this vertically a few times so that I can create that kind of nice scallop along the edge. Right click, go back into object mode, and then I'm gonna mesh display. Where is my insert edge loop under mesh tools? So mesh tools, insert edge loop, and then I'm gonna click kind of in the middle, and then I'm gonna click kind of on either side of that. So now I've got a little bit more of a complex vertices to select. And then I'm going to go back into my arrow selection tool, right click and select a vertex. And then make sure under my modeling toolkit, I've got soft selection turned on. And if you need to change your soft selection, you can play around with the soft selection settings under, you double click that white arrow again, and then you'll come up with your soft selection, and you can change like the radius, so like how the distance of the affected vertices. I'm gonna try 3. Let's see what happens. Hit W to get my handles. Yeah, I kind of squished it maybe a little bit more than I would have liked, but that looks pretty good. I'm sorry to get that scallop. It's a little bit hard to tell when I'm not in my quad view. I'm going to right click and go back into object mode. Yeah, I think I like it. That looks great. It's like a nice little squat mushroomy umbrella. All right, so now I'm going to duplicate special. Select my object under edit and then duplicate special. I'm going to select the little white box next to duplicate special. And I'm going to make sure my translate X, Y, and Z is all set to 0. I'm going to, I think, copy and group under the parent is good for now. I'm going to scale 1, 1, 1. The important thing is that I want this to rotate 45 degrees every time it translates. I have 8 of these sections in total. So 8 times 45, I hope, is 360 degrees, or some variant of there that gets us all the way around. Maybe 145 degree off from 360. And then I'm going to create 7 copies so that I have 8 total. And I'm going to hit apply. And there we go. And so now that it's close, it didn't actually group under parent like I thought it would. But what I can do now is select all of these. And I want them all to be in the same mesh. So I can go over in my modeling toolkit and I can say combine. And so now they're all back into one mesh. Go into vertex selection. So because I think I made an instance of these things and not a copy, when I edit one, it does not apply to all of them. Okay, so that is the basics of, go back into object mode, duplicate special. You can use it to create like kind of grids of objects as well. So if I go and duplicate special, get my settings there, edit, duplicate special. Without the rotation, it's kind of hard to tell when a sphere is rotated anyway. So I'm just gonna turn that 0, 0, 0. And then I want maybe like 15 instances, and I'm going to translate along the X and the Z. So X, Y, and Z. So just 1 and 1, and then hit apply. And then you can see it's kind of moving off in this like 45 degree angle from the original, 1 unit by 1 unit every time. Undo that and create under parent. I thought it would do that. Let's try instance and apply. Undo. What I'm trying to do is test out the new group. Let's see if that works. Nope. Looks like they're all independently operable. Anyway, I did change this from instance, from copy to instance. So let me see what happens if I select. Interesting. So yeah, if I go in edit mode and start editing it will apply the translation to all of the objects. But if I'm in object mode, it won't, which is kind of interesting. And then let's see, I'm going to turn off. That could be because I have the soft select tool on. Yeah, but it's still, either way it works. And then I'm going to turn soft selection like way down, and then W, and then grab one of these. Yeah, so when you make an instance of the object, you can still go back in and edit vertices, and those changes will apply across the board to all of the children, all of the instances of that original object. Unlike the umbrella where I made copies of the original object, and now when I go back in and I edit the object, the edits of those vertices only apply to the original object and not to its instances. Right. It's late and I'm losing language, so I think I'll sign off, but that's really about all I wanted to show you for this tutorial today. Hope it was useful, and I will see those of you in my class soon. If not, I hope this finds you well. Take care.